During the 1930s and going into the 40s, my mother would take our family to concerning the Stampede. The first thing we went to was the parade. My mother knew where to go, and we got there early, and we got a place standing on the edge of the sidewalk so we could had a good view of all the parades. The parades consisted of a lot of horses. I didn't know anything about horses. I wasn't too keen about the horses. And another thing that they had was the natives. The natives were out in all their finery. They had their beadwork and their leather, and they looked grand. I really enjoyed them. There were also the floats. The floats were good too. We really enjoyed it, and often we had clowns going up and down the street, and they were very interesting to us. The next thing that we went to was the Children's Day. When we left the school on the last day before our summer holidays, we were given a ticket with a number on it. This was a raffle ticket. And if we went to the Children's Day, we had a chance to get a pony, not a pony, but a puppy, or a bicycle. Now we were hoping for a bicycle. We'd leave home early in the day to get down to the grounds. When we got there were crowds of people like we hadn't ever seen before. We went into the grounds and headed for the grandstand. We went up in the grandstand, and my mother was pretty good at getting there at a time when there were still lots of seats and more seats where we could see well. And we settled in for the program. First there was a variety show of dancing and animal tricks and singing, and which we enjoyed. The next part of the program was a display of cattle. Across the platform, farmers who were into raising registered animals took their cows and their bulls across the platform. They gave us a talk about each one. They told us what the dam and the sire, that is the mother and the father of these cattle, were. Oh, it was boring. Being a city person, I had no interest in cattle. But we persevered because next to come was the draw. And we never did win a puppy or a bike. It was disappointing not to get a bike, but puppy would have been a problem because we could not afford a dog, and my parents definitely wouldn't have been very happy. After the draws, we went out. My mother had brought a lunch. We went out onto the grounds, and at that time there were still lots of trees and grass along the river, and there we would have our picnic lunch. Waiting for us would be a Union Dairy truck, or not, a wagon pulled by a horse, because that's how they delivered all the milk in Calgary in those days. We would line up then to buy milk to drink with our lunch, and seeing as it was a special day, we had chocolate milk. Then, after our lunch, our mother took us out onto the grounds where the rides were. We couldn't afford many rides. This was the first thing that would cost money. But we went on a few, and I remember the one I liked best was there was cars on a track, on a round track. They wobbled as you sat in them. They wobbled all around the track. Then they started to go up and down as well as wobble, and then a cover went over, a green cover went over the cars and putting us in complete darkness. So that was really fun. I liked that one. There were other things on there that we could have gone into. They had something called a freak show, and this was people in there who were said to have been born with different deformities, and they also had the fattest woman on earth, and they had the thinnest man on earth in there. I never went in. I didn't think it was nice for us to go and stare at these people. Another thing we could go into was a house of mirrors. As we walked along, a kind of a moving walkway that sometimes went down, sometimes went up, and we saw ourselves in mirrors, and sometimes we were very, very tall, sometimes very, very fat, sometimes quite distorted in these mirrors. That was fun. Then my mother would take us to the buildings where there were exhibitions showing off different things that had a lot of artwork, a lot of handicrafts, and we made a complete tour of that, and I found that fairly interesting. There were in some of these buildings people selling things. They were mostly kitchen gadgets. Now, maybe like a can opener. Now, when they demonstrated them, all of these gadgets worked wonderfully. I remember once we bought a knife for cutting glass. But they would give a demonstration of them working beautifully, but when you got your package and took it home, that gadget didn't work at all the way it did in the exhibit. And then my mom would take us to the barns. She'd been a farm girl, and she liked the cattle and the chickens and everything that was there, and we had a closer look at all those things. When it was time to go home, we got an extra treat. In those days, they sold what were called all-day suckers. The suckers were about 6 inches long. They came in beautiful flavors of lemon, lime, strawberry, raspberry. You had a hard time choosing one, and they were covered with chocolate and foil over that. It was best to open them up right away, because inside some of the suckers was a little slip of paper that said you had won another sucker. So, of course, we did that. We went home happy. We had a good day. But one year it didn't turn out so well. My younger brother, who was about 7, got lost. When we realized he wasn't with us, we got very panicky. There was an announcement over a loudspeaker every so often saying that lost children should go to a certain place. I didn't really understand where this place was, and I didn't know how my brother would understand, but my mother knew where to go, and she left Lois, my sister, and I to stand in one spot and watch the crowd while she went and to see if Cliff was where she hoped he'd be. When she got there, he wasn't there. She came back to us, and we hadn't seen him. But we looked around for another, maybe an hour, and my mother went back to see if he had turned up at the lost and found place, and he hadn't. So my mother said, we're just going to go home. I was appalled. I thought, we can't leave him there. But she thought that was the best thing to do, and I was very skeptical about that. I didn't know if we should do that. He was a very annoying brother, but I still didn't want to lose him. So, but we got home. We left the grounds, got on the streetcar, we went back home. We walked the block to our house, and there he was, sitting on the steps, waiting for us. Now, I'd kind of forgotten this story, but a couple of years ago, I asked him, how did you find your way home? That was one part of the story I had forgotten. And he said, I just followed the streetcar tracks. And that, with a certain amount of skill, he managed to find himself way home. Now, we were very glad to see him, but I was really annoyed because in all this, we had missed our all-day suckers.